I will be one of the two moderators for tonight's forum, along with our assistant director, Megan Maurer. There. We have partnered with the Missouri Media Group, also known as the Missourian, to present this candidate forum tonight. This event will be live streamed on social media. It'll be live streamed on the Scenic Regional's main Facebook page, not the Union Branch's page, just in case you're looking for that. We will be recording this also and placing it on YouTube, and it will probably be posted probably in a couple days. We'll put it on all our branch Facebook pages that are in this district, and the Missourian will also have it on their social media page and their website as well. So we're going to be circulating the video recording of this quite a bit. So I know when we mentioned that we're going to be doing a recording and a live stream of this, probably hurt our attendance here tonight, but people will be able to watch this all the way up and through till the election. Let's see here. Our first race tonight is going to be the Republican primary race for the Franklin County 2nd District Commissioner seat, and we will hear from challenger Ken Cox. It's a little bit of an unusual situation. The incumbent, Commissioner Dave Hinson, originally agreed to appear at our forum tonight, but as you might have heard, he recently announced that he'll be resigning from office later this month, and but he's still going to appear on the ballot. So in order to advance the general election in November, Mr. Cox will still need to win his primary. So we're considering this a competitive race still. It is a competitive race, and that's why he's here to talk tonight. So that's kind of the backstory on the commissioner race. Then next, we'll be hearing from incumbent State Representative Brad Banderman and challenger Rafael Madrigal, who will be running in the Republican primary for District 119 for the Missouri House of Representatives. We did receive some complaints about not inviting Democratic candidates to the forum. I just wanted to make it clear, we decided to have the forums for competitive races in our county, and the Democratic candidates who are running are unopposed in their primary races, which is why they're not invited, or why we didn't do a forum for those races. We are certainly, the library and the Missourian are certainly open to doing a forum in the fall for the general election, where we would invite both the Democratic and the Republican candidates, as long as they are both willing to participate in that. So that is still on the table. We're not trying to snub the Democratic Party in any way in Franklin County. Each candidate tonight will begin with a 2-minute opening statement. They will also then have 2 minutes to answer each question. We have 11 questions for our House race and 10 questions for the commission race. The candidates were given the questions about 20 minutes ago when they first arrived, so I had a little bit of chance to look them over. And then, let's see, I lost my train of thought here now. The moderator, who is not asking the questions between Megan and I, will serve as timekeeper. The timekeeper will show a yellow card. Oh, that's okay, well, you can see it that way. At the 30-second mark, and then, of course, when their time's up, we'll show them the stop corner. The questions we're asking tonight were accepted from the public in advance. We advertised on social media and had on our website for them to submit questions. We will not be accepting questions from the audience tonight. Unfortunately, we were not able to ask every question we received due to time constraints. I mentioned we're only asking 10 or 11 questions. If we received several questions on the same topic, we combined those into a single question. We also eliminated questions that were directed to a specific candidate, which we did receive several of those because we want to be able to question that both candidates can respond to. We can't do that if it's specifically to an individual candidate. So I asked everybody please silence their phones and no one speak during the forum. And now that we have all these housekeeping details out of the way, we will begin. Good luck, candidates.
Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah, my name is Ken Cox. I'm running for Franklin County Commissioner, 2nd District. As Steve had noted, my opponent's not here tonight. He walked out of the election. He accepted a job in another state, so he's no longer an eligible candidate. But I still need your vote on August the 6th, obviously. A little bit about myself. I'm a civil engineer. I own a farm here in Franklin County. Married my wife for 43 years. Children. My experience, I was with Missouri Department of Transportation. Took care of 10 counties. I was with St. Louis County in their Department of Highways and Traffic, in their transportation section. And I was with the City of St. Louis. I was the Deputy Traffic Commissioner for the City of St. Louis for 12 years. For the past 16 years, if you're counting, it's over 40 years of experience. For the past 16 years, I'm the Senior Director of Engineering for a manufacturing company. And I guess with that, I go ahead and open it to your questions.
Okay, thank you. The first question we have is, what issues that impact Franklin County residents are a priority for you, and how will you support ongoing efforts to address those issues?
Well, I think safety is always a big issue, no matter where, where we live. Like I said, as Deputy Traffic Commissioner of the City of St. Louis, safety was a big thing there. Still looking for it, I believe. Without safety and the rule of law, it's hard to have anything else. So safety would be one of the things I'd be looking at. Another thing I would look at is quality of life. Quality of life to me is, our tax dollars, finding gainful employment, fair wage. Those are the other things I would look at. Bring industry into the county. Not so much. I see St. Charles County, and a lot of people say that it's going really well. A lot of St. Charles County is a service industry. It relies on other counties. It's a bedroom community kind of. They go work in St. Louis County or in other counties. But I'd rather be that anchor county. Have good industry and good living wage jobs.
Thank you. In 2023, Missouri law was enacted that allows counties to pass ordinances to freeze property taxes for seniors. Do you support this measure? And if so, how would you respond to a political subdivision that will be directly impacted by the loss of revenue?
I'm familiar with that law. I believe St. Charles County passed it. The only problem I have with that is I have a brother that lives there. Him and his wife, they're both on Social Security. The county passed a law that once you're a senior, you don't have to pay your property tax. It sounds really good until you start looking at the fine print. They're both on Social Security, and they don't meet the income limitation. So it's one of those feel-good laws that look what we're doing, but it really doesn't affect anyone and anybody that makes any difference in your life. Like I said, they're both on Social Security, and they make too much money to get that benefit, so they shouldn't even bother passing it. So if we pass something like that, I would not want to have limitations such as that. I think it's something that should go across the board to all seniors. Everyone should receive the same benefit. You shouldn't be kicked out of a certain category because of income limitation. As far as budgetary concerns for subdivisions, anytime I hear someone saying, well, we can't get rid of that tax, we need that tax, you're really saying is, you know how to spend that money better than they do, and the citizens, and I don't believe that. I think we're always better at handling our own money better than the government is, and I think we see a lot of that today.
Recently, the City of Union and Franklin County canceled a plan to build a roundabout and expressway to alleviate traffic on Highway 47. What do you believe should be done to address the traffic issues along Highway 47 in Franklin County?
That kind of falls into my area. Like I said, I'm a civil engineer. I've been doing traffic engineering since 1985. So as far as that project goes, we got out of that project at the county and the City of Union and kicked it back to MoDOT. So MoDOT what they would do is have to program it. So the possibility it could still get done down in the future, but it'd have to compete with other projects throughout the state. It may be, a year, 2 years, 10 years, 20 years. It may never happen. But that's the life of projects. If you're have the 20% or 30% matching, then you got a better chance of getting the state funding for it. As far as what to do in the meantime, I drive that section of roadway 47, and as a transportation engineer, I see the problems we have right now. It's coordination and timing issues can fix a lot of this. The traffic signals are, in my opinion, timed poorly, and the coordination, I don't even believe it exists through that section of roadway. So that's a similar improvement that could be done without, putting in new sections of roadway, concrete and such.
Many candidates during this election cycle are campaigning on fiscal responsibility and fiscal conservatism. What do these terms mean to you in practice?
Well, if it's fiscal responsibility, it's a fiduciary responsibility. I've had companies in the past and still work for a very large company now. You're responsible for the dollars you get. People work hard for those dollars. You're taking them and you're saying we're going to invest it into infrastructure, into quality of life issues or safety issues. And you gotta make sure you're doing a good job with it. You're not wasting their dollars. Like I said before, I believe we pay too much right now today in taxes. I don't believe we're as responsible as we should be as watchers of your tax dollars. But to me, that's the thing. If I'm taking tax dollars for something, I want to make sure it's for exactly what I said it was. It's going to do what I said it's going to do, and it's not going to go somewhere else. And if there's something left over, I'm not going to look at it as a pot of, well, we've got more money to spend now. That's money that can either go back, or we can cut some taxes in some other areas.
Okay. In Missouri, counties with more than 85,000 residents are allowed to adopt a charter form of government, which provides a degree of home rule and more representation. If there was another effort to create a charter form of government in Franklin County, would you support it?
I would have to look into it. I mean, my experience with charter governments is minimal. Like I said, I work for St. Louis County, Department of Highways and Traffic. They have a form of government. It's not going very well right now for St. Louis County. I don't know if it's because of that form of government or if it's because of Sam Page, but it seems like there's a lot of issues over there. So I think maybe, that's something we'd have to look into more. I think anytime you get more eyes on a subject than maybe one set of eyes, you're gonna have a better decision. And I believe our form of government right now, I mean, if there's something better, I have to think that we would probably lean more that way. We've been over 85,000 for quite some time in the state of Missouri. I think we're at 107,000 today, somewhere there.
If elected, how do you believe county commissioners should engage the public?
I think we should be available to the public. The public's, we're employed by the public. They're our boss. So, like I said, I was a veteran. I served in the Middle East. I've worked at the state level, the county level, and the city level, so I know that very well, that who my boss is. So to me, the big thing is that openness, to have that channel between you. Because if you don't have that, you're going to be working in a vacuum, and I've never seen that work out very well.
There are some residents of Franklin County without access to high-speed internet. In other cases, access is available but unaffordable. With the importance of internet access today for everything from applying for jobs to telehealth, how will you work with local, state, and national leaders to try to address this issue?
Well, as stated earlier, I live on a farm. I don't have high-speed internet. I'm on a cellular modem for my internet. I have knowledge of the federal passage of the fiber to farm, that passed a while back, and it hasn't went anywhere. There's a lot of money still sitting there, hasn't been spent, and some of it's been spent without too much show for what was being spent. And these fiber providers, they're looking for big customer bases. They're getting this funding, but they're still looking at their pocket. Well, we want to go here first because there's 1,000 people over here and there's only 20 over here at this farm. But the whole intent, from my understanding, was fiber to the farm. It's pretty simple. And a lot of these areas where it's going is not farm. It's, you know, it's more, it's areas that need it, but it's built up areas in which a provider sees they can make a better profit. So I think we need some better oversight there.
What are your thoughts about using tax abatements and other tax incentives by Franklin County to attract new businesses and stimulate economic growth?
Well, like I said, I'm not gonna push raising taxes. I can see attracting business. Like I said earlier, I like to see industry and such come in here with good paying living wage jobs. I think one of the big pushes we're probably gonna see is that I work for a major manufacturer. We've done, you know, bringing our stuff all near side. Now it's all of our stuff is made here in the United States. I think once President Trump gets in office, we're gonna see a big push that way. We're gonna see a lot of companies bring all their manufacturing, not near shore, but not for NAFTA, but back into the United States. And I think Franklin County should be ready and prepared so that we can attract some of that, you know, that moved money here into the county, because we need the jobs and we need the, you know, like I said, the living wage jobs. I don't want jobs where people just get by. There's enough of that now. There's a lot of people out there just getting by.
The University of Missouri Extension in Franklin County, which is partly funded by the County Commission, strives to positively impact our community by providing programming and resources. Currently, Franklin County has the largest 4-H enrollment in the state. Considering this high level of interest, would you be open to considering an increase in county funding for the Franklin County MU Extension?
Well, I'm all for education. I think, you know, education is you know, the root of advancement. I don't see giving money out just for the sake of giving money out either. I think we need to look at if any entity, educational or otherwise, wants to see an advance in money, we need to see it towards a particular cause, a particular thing. What's it gonna solve? What can you tell us is gonna happen once this money's there? You know, what kind of guarantees do we have? We want to see a cause and effect. And, you know, if we don't see that, I'm not gonna just give money blindly into a program. So we'd have to look at it on a per basis. You know, if the university has a direct need that the county sees it's gonna benefit our citizens, quality of our citizens, maybe to attract some of that industry, I think it's a good investment. But just to openly give the money, I'd say no. You know, we need to see where our dollars are going if we're gonna spend them.
Mr. Cox, this is your final question. County commissioners have a big workload encompassing everything from formulating the budget and supervising county departments to representing the county on many local and regional councils. How will you prioritize that workload?
Budget's always important because that affects tax dollars. So anything we can do to cut back the taxes, I'm all for it. You know, everyone needs to look at their budgets. I believe I've heard Tim Baker say when he looks at his budget as in his office, he starts at zero and starts working his way up. He doesn't start up here and work his way down. So he's basically saying that he justifies every dollar that he's putting into his budget. And that's what we should have. You hear a lot about like line item vetoes and such. We should have line item budgets, Terry, things that we can look at broken up into line items and say, you know, is this as important, which is, you know, levels of importance. Like I said, I worked at state, county, and the city level, so I've had a budget in each one of those positions and have done very well. Anyone familiar with Missouri Department of Transportation, we're controlled by a commission, but the Highway Department, Missouri Department of Transportation has always been in the black. We've never been in the red. I was the operations engineer from 85 to 95 for MoDOT, and we were always in the black. And the rest of the state was in the red. Matter of fact, we got frozen because we were still giving raises to our people, and the rest of the state, conservation and such, and DNR was not getting raises because they were in the red. So the legislature went to our commission and said, you gotta align yourself with the rest of the state, or we're gonna cut your budget. So of course they aligned themselves, and we were frozen. I was there president for 5 years, waiting for the rest of the state to catch up.
Okay, you now can begin with the 2 minutes we set aside for your closing remarks.
Well, as I said, my opponent dropped out. Unfortunately, he didn't remove his name from the ballot during by the given time period, so his name's still on the ballot. So I still need your vote August 6th, and your support. I appreciate everyone being here and listening to us this evening. I know everyone's got something else to do. I know I'll do a good job. I've proven that in the past. I've taken care of many projects throughout this state, the state, county, and city levels. And worked with Federal Highway, I worked with FEMA, I worked with all the different organizations out there. Wrote grants for IC legislation, working through those in my office, and was very successful in getting federal tax dollars for different projects. So again, I appreciate any support I can get and your vote, more importantly, on August the 6th. Thank you.
Okay. We will begin our next part of the forum with Representative Brad Vanderman and challenger Rafael Madrigal. What we're going to do, gentlemen, is start out with our incumbent, Mr. Vanderman, or Representative Vanderman, and then go to Mr. Madrigal, and then we'll reverse that order for every question. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay. Am I missing something? Oh, yes, of course. So we'll start out with Representative Vanderman's opening statement, which you have 2 minutes for.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for joining us in person here tonight, and also if you're joining us at home. My name is Brad Vanderman. I am the current state representative for District 119 that covers St. Clair, Union, Pacific, Gray Summit, Catawissa, and Robertsville. I am happily married to Shannon Vanderman. She's the principal of Lonedale School. And we have 2 grown children, Clay and Kyle, that we're both very proud of. My oldest son serves as a fireman, paramedic in Brentwood, and my youngest son just finished computer programming school in St. Louis and is currently looking for a job in that field. Very proud that I am the student pastor of Bethel Church. I've been there full time now for 26 years. It's a little country church in between St. Clair and Lonedale on Highway 30, and I've spent the better part of my working years there, serving the people of both St. Clair and Lonedale areas, and especially the students of that area. I'm also currently one of the chaplains for the St. Clair Police Department, and very proud to be the voice of the St. Clair Bulldogs. I took over that process about 15 years ago, being the school announcer. I figured as a youth pastor, if I've got to be at every sporting event, I might as well be the announcer, and it's been a real joy. I have lived in this community for my entire life, other than 2 years. Middle of 6th grade, we moved to Colorado. In the middle of 8th grade, we moved back to Union. So I've lived most of my life in St. Clair, graduated from Union in 95, college in 98, and better part of 46 years I've spent here inside of Franklin County serving the people of this area.
Thank you. Mr. Madrigal, you can begin your 2 minutes.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Rafael Madrigal, candidate for State Representative, District 119. I'm the only candidate vetted as a true Republican. Furthermore, I'm the only candidate who's endorsed by the Franklin County Republican Central Committee. A little bit about me. My parents immigrated from Mexico, but they did it the right way. They stood in line, got their green cards, and became United States citizens. They also taught their children to honor God, honor their families, and respect and serve the United States of America. Currently, I am CEO of American Freedom Benefits, a retirement planning company that is conservative. In the past, I have served in senior leadership for Fortune 500 companies. Through my own personal philanthropy, I have served as president of the Community College Foundation, president of Parish Council, vice chair for Workforce Investment Board. Currently, I'm alderman for the city of Pacific, where I'm most proud of developing, pushing, and passing the legislation to fund and save the Pacific Police Department. I have been a Rotarian for over 20 years. I am currently a member of the Union Rotary. I've been a Rotarian for over 20 years. I have 4 key issues on my platform. First is economic growth, utilizing my business strength and initiative to bring companies and great jobs to Missouri and Franklin County in particular. Second would be safety and the deportation of illegal aliens. Third, education and the protection of our school children. Fourth, veterans and making sure they get the resources that have been badly overlooked for too long. Finally, I have not accepted a penny of any special interest or lobbying group. I am there to drain the swamp, not join it.
All right, we'll begin with our first question for Representative Banderman. Currently, all 3 gubernatorial candidates have publicly stated that they support the elimination of Missouri state income tax. Where do you stand on proposed changes to Missouri state income tax, whether it be a complete elimination, a reduction, or an exemption for certain groups of people?
So the income tax of the state of Missouri, we passed, before I got into office 2 years ago, we passed the largest tax reduction of income in state history in 2020. And since then, revenues of the state of Missouri have continued to go up. It proves that the process of limiting taxes does not directly impact the number of dollars that come in. We have continued to increase our state budget and our income, even though we was able to lower income taxes at a historic rate. I'm not surprised that 3 gubernatorial candidates are encouraging us to lower or eliminate state income tax. And I think if you're going to target a tax to lower or remove, it's one that I would be interested in. Income tax is a tax that is affected on those that go to work. I mean, if you're going to deal with a tax that we'd like to reduce or eliminate, why not eliminate or reduce a tax on a person that's actually going to work? And so the income tax was one of the targets in 2020 to lower, and even though we historically lowered that, our revenues have continued to go up. Certainly it would be a process that you would have to look at to sustain your budget, whether you could lower them or completely eliminate them, but I'm not surprised that our 3 Republican gubernatorial candidates have targeted this as a tax that could be lowered or eliminated.
Thank you. Hopefully we've passed our technical difficulties. Yeah, we'll
Is that
try.
better?
You can begin answering. Will you repeat the question again for you?
Please.
Currently, all 3 gubernatorial candidates have publicly stated that they support the elimination of Missouri state income tax. Where do you stand on proposed changes to the Missouri state income tax, whether it be complete elimination, a reduction, or an exemption for certain groups of people?
Absolutely. I am for the elimination of the tax, state income tax, as well as the elimination of the personal property tax. 7 of the 8 states that surround Missouri are at or going to 0 with state tax and personal property tax. It's no illusion that those states are outperforming us. Furthermore, we need to take stronger control over our budget. In 2022, the budget for Missouri was $38.2 million. For the last 2 years, it has exceeded $51 billion. Part of that is we don't do fiscal audits from outside independent sources. We have 7,000 state employee positions that have gone unfilled for years, yet the taxpayers still share that burden of having to pay for them. We have over 51,000 state employees, which is far more than states even smaller than us. So, with that in mind, through economic growth and also by bringing companies to Missouri, the reason why Elon Musk just did his super AI computer in Memphis wasn't because Memphis is prettier or has better people or is safer. It's because they do not have the taxes that burden our economy. By the elimination of taxes, we will be able to bring in venture capitalist private funding to grow our economy. Thank you so much.
second question will be directed to you, Mr. Madrigal. A measure will potentially be placed on the ballot in November to legalize abortion in Missouri. If the measure were to pass, what do you believe the legislature's response should be?
First and foremost, I am pro-life. So is Brad, who's a very good man here. But I will stick my neck out in the line for pro-life. In fact, I have. I'm the only candidate who actually did the video for the decline to sign abortion petition, which is funded by George Soros. And I will mention that name repeatedly because I will take him on and his son, which has been a bane of our existence in hardworking Missouri and states here to influence our elections. What we can do in the state legislature, we can do legislation and put it in the Constitution to protect the sanctity of life, because life is precious. And let me say why. People ask me, oh, it's simply because of religious views? No. If a woman is pregnant, rather, even if it's 1 month, 5 months, or 8 months, and she is murdered, it does not count as a single homicide. It counts as a double homicide. We must protect the sanctity of life for those who are not able to speak. We have to speak on their behalf.
Mr. Baker, a question to you.
I have seen the IP that I believe is going to have enough signatures to get placed on the ballot, and that particular provision I will be personally voting against. I think it's far-ranging. I think it's outside of the normal process that you would see across our state, and I'm very proud of the work that the Republican legislature did before I got into office. Limiting abortion to the life of the mother, I believe, was the correct move. I'm very proud of the laws that we have within our state that protects life. This particular IP is very far-ranging. I think it'll be a surprise to many to find out exactly what's in it. It was wrote in a way that would protect itself from legislature making adjustments to it, and that's the reason that they went through the constitutional IP process. It ties our hands, much like it did in the marijuana IP that just passed. We can't even regulate the potency of marijuana now within our state because of that new provision in our Constitution. As a legislator, I am pro-life. I'm the only candidate in this race that has been endorsed by the Missouri Right to Life. I worked side by side with them this year inside of the legislature, along with our budget chair, Cody Smith, to pass a very important provision that limits state funding to go to any abortion facility or their affiliates, even if they operate outside of our state. I think that process of limiting state funding for abortions, whether that process is expanded in November or not, was very important to our state, and I supported it. I think as a legislator, before I finish, I think we need to protect life. Making abortion rare would be something that I would be in full support of, and I have been consistent in this area my whole life.
Thank you. This question will be for Representative Vanderman. We're going to reverse again, like I mentioned. Do you support initiative petition reform? If so, how would you like to see it changed?
So this is a really big question. We only have 2 minutes, and you can deal with IP reform in a statutory process, or you can deal with IP reform when it comes to constitutional amendments, whether they're proposed by the legislature or outside from the public. I do support IP reform, both statutorily and within the constitutional framework, and we worked very hard this year in the House of Representatives to make some adjustments in the initiative petition process of our state. Mike Hafner, Representative Hafner, led the charge for IP reform on the statutory side of things, and Representative Ed Lewis and Representative John Black led the charge of the House for the constitutional IP. A bill was presented to us from the Senate, Senator Coleman, Senate Joint Resolution 74, and when it came to us, I believe that it was needing some help. It needed an amendment. I serve on the elections committee along with many other fine representatives. It is a great committee. It deals with a lot of really important issues within our state. And this particular issue ended up in the committee that I serve on. Chairwoman McGaugh asked me to form our amendment from the House to this important joint resolution. And I worked for almost 3 weeks developing an amendment that the House would not only support and pass, but I believe had the momentum to pass at the ballot box. I worked very hard on this process, and I think in a general sense, IP reform needs to be thought about in this way. The reforms that are needed because we need to have a broad consensus across our state instead of just in a few locations before we adjust something as important as the framework for our governance.
Mr. Madrigal?
Thank you. I would like to take just a moment to go back to a comment made by my esteemed opponent. When he said he has the exclusive support for right to life, I received the letter as well. And they basically stated, yes, I am pro-life 100%, but they always endorse the incumbent. So I wish to make that clarification. I further share his view, though, IP reform is very important because it prevents our greater populated areas such as St. Louis and Kansas City, which tend to be more liberal, from having absolute control over everybody. Great example is our federal system, where our smaller states still have 2 senators, thus giving them equal say within the Senate. What we need to do is make sure we have that same type of protection for our voters, regardless of how small or large their community and county is. Also, what we need to do is, I told you before, we get too much outside influence from George Soros and other liberals. We have PACs from California paying millions of dollars into Missouri elections, trying to influence it. That's how we ended up with marijuana structured the way it was, where it should have been a statute rather than put into the amendment. Furthermore, we need to do a stronger bill from the House that utilizes the great language that our current state senator Ben Brown utilized. Because when the president pro tem of the Senate received the bill, there was what he quoted as being redundant language in the House bill. I will work strongly with the conservative wing of the House to make sure that we get IP reform passed.
Mr. Madrigal, in 2018, 73% of Franklin County voters overturned a right-to-work law passed by the Missouri legislature. Would you support a renewed effort by the legislature to implement right-to-work again?
The will of the people is spoken. 73% is not a hair win. It is a vast majority. And let me be fully transparent. I'm a blue-collar kid. My dad was a lifelong Teamster. My mom was a Baker's Union member. They put me through college. So yes, I will not try to repeal this because the people have spoken. But more importantly, I want to work with the schools here in Missouri. I have already conferred with our state treasurer many times so that we can do reallocation of funds. 70% of our children in our high schools have no intention of going to college, but they have no future. When I was young, we had shop class. I will put trade schools in our high schools so that when kids graduate, they have great careers ahead of them as welders, electricians, carpenters, automotive technicians. They will have a future. So no, I will not fight to repeal that, but I am going to work strongly to make life far better and prosperous for the future generations of Missouri.
Mr. Vanderman, your question?
Yeah, the subject of right to work is obviously one that's been bantered about quite a bit. The legislature got involved in it more than once. The people have voted now in an overwhelming majority to reject the idea. And I believe as a legislator, it would be foolish of us. I heard no talk. I serve in the House. I've been down there now for 2 years. I heard no one proposing a bill that would reinstitute right to work. There was a push within the legislature for years in this idea. I believe there are there's some issues on both sides of this with communication that was unfair in both sides of this particular issue. But I believe if right to work is to come back to the vote of the people, it should come from outside of Jeff City and not from within. And I believe that in the economy that we unfortunately are finding ourselves in right now with hyperinflation, an opportunity to threaten someone's livelihood would be the wrong move for the state legislature. So I'll reiterate my position. I believe that if right to work were to gain an opportunity to be voted on by the people again, it should come from outside of the Capitol, not from within.
Thank you. This next question is for Representative Vanderman. The Missouri legislature passed a gas tax in 2021, which will increase to 17 cents by July of 2025. Do you support a repeal of the gas tax?
So the gas tax was voted on before I was elected as our representative. It was one of those votes that every representative ends up in some very challenging votes from one year to the next. This year, our challenging vote was on an election bill, and it took place literally within the last week or so of the session. The gas tax was not one of those votes for me, and I'm thankful. It was a very challenging vote on a very important issue to our state. The funding of infrastructure is critical to the growth of our state. We cannot attract business. We cannot move our farming equipment. We cannot move our crops. We cannot get to the grocery store if we do not have good infrastructure. Growth as a state is dependent on many things, but one of them is infrastructure. How to fund infrastructure is a challenging problem. Within our state, we are one of the highest states of state-controlled miles in the country. The state controls a lot of roadway in our state. So when you start talking about how to fund it, you can fund it through a user-based tax like we saw with the gas tax, where when you purchase a gallon of gasoline, some of that money would go to help it. Or we could raise taxes in another way if we needed to, or find money that's in the budget right now to take care of the needs that we have. The state gas tax is not being talked about in the legislature right now to be repealed. Not only was it not talked about, there wasn't a bill filed to do it. I don't believe there's hardly any momentum in the state legislature right now to repeal it. And I think the process that our gubernatorial candidates are moving in to reduce income tax is a far better impact on working day Americans, Missourians, than it would be to lower the gas tax or repeal what was done.
Your question, Mr. McAdoo?
Of course. I am in absolute support and will fight for repealing the gas tax in Missouri because it is theft. Furthermore, because of inflation, we have seen gas prices. Recently, I was part of a movement where for a couple of hours, we rolled gas prices back at particular gas stations in Franklin County to the prices that were with President Trump. Lines went round the block. Gas prices have increased by more than 60% here in Missouri. Furthermore, a friend of mine, Grover Norquist, founder and executive director of Americans for Taxpayer Reform, he and I were both mentored by Sandy Muir, who was the professional personal advisor to President Ronald Reagan. I have signed the Taxpayer Protection Pledge, which vows I will not raise taxes on Missourians. In fact, I am going to fight to eliminate those overburdensome taxes on you for the hard-working citizens of Missouri. Finally, when they talk about for the roads, there is no oversight on MoDOT. My good buddy Ken always says MoDOT was in the black. Isn't that correct? However, there is no oversight. That's taxpayer funding. Yet we don't know what really happens with the money. The best advice is, I always go to people smarter and in the know, say that if we were to go ahead and have an election or change two of the commissioners so that we would have oversight. In other words, it would finally be accountable to the Missouri taxpayer. Finally, in the city of Pacific, working with the mayor and our developers, we were able to do $7 million of infrastructure last year without raising 1 penny in taxes.
Mr. Madrigal, in 2022, legislation was passed to eliminate the primary system in Missouri that had been used since 2000. Do you support the recreation of a presidential primary in Missouri?
Actually, I do. So we recently had a caucus, and I'm proud to say at our county caucus and congressional caucus, I had the honor of nominating President Trump as a Republican candidate, and that all the delegates were assigned to President Trump. However, yes, I do fully, wholeheartedly doing a primary, but it must be a closed and binding primary. What happened in the past when we did have primaries, even if they were closed, they were not binding. What ended up happening? The powers that be, the elite in Jefferson City, said, well, we want to tweak this, so they had their own caucus and passed who they wanted. That is unfair to the voters who stood in line, primary, and went there. Also, that cost the taxpayers an additional $6 million. The corruption ran long. So yes, I am for closed primaries, but they must be binding.
Question?
So for several years, the state of Missouri has had a presidential preference primary process that took place in March. And as part of a piece of legislation that was passed before I got into office, most of that bill was excellent. Most of it was. This particular provision is troublesome in many different ways. But the process of going to a caucus system within our county took place this year. I believe it was successful. I was there in person. The process went in an orderly fashion. It took place as it should. It got finished. But out of a county of 110,000 people, there were about 250 people there that day for the caucus. If you worked that day, you weren't allowed to come in. If you were deployed in the military, you had no way to cast a vote for the presidential preference for you. And I worked last year, and I worked again this year to bring back the presidential preference primary for the state of Missouri. We got it out of committee again, and that process I worked on directly on what weakened it. So the political parties control their caucus and primary process, and they both have barriers in place for the state of Missouri when we can have a primary, when we should have a primary. The earliest we can have it is the first Tuesday of March, and that is what the House Committee on Elections that I sit on was working to get done. Reinstituted for the first Tuesday of March, where we would not only have a preference primary, but we would be relevant. The initial bill that came through was in April. The field would be winnowed very small by then. But I'm definitely in favor of a presidential preference primary instead of a caucus system at the county level, and I fought for it both years that I've been in.
Thank you. Next question, we'll begin with Representative Bannerman again. Do you believe that man-made climate change is real? And if so, how do you believe the Missouri legislature can work toward addressing it?
So climate change is an interesting debate, both at a local level and at a macro level. I do believe that our globe, the whole planet, the macro level of climate change, I believe our planet to be very hardy. I think the idea that we can affect the weather at a macro level within our globe is very challenging for me to consume in an intellectual way. The planet's been here for a long time. It's heated, it's cooled many times. Just a little while ago, there was threats of an ice age, and now we're in threats of it being too warm. I believe that we certainly have responsibility over our climate. I have still not met a single person, and I've talked to thousands of people in my life that wants dirty water and dirty air. And I believe a regulatory process that makes sense for our water and our air, one that won't bankrupt our nation or our state pursuing, is one that we need to pursue. We need to keep our streams and our air clean We need to do that as best we can, and I'm thankful for the major progress we've made in this area. When I was a boy living in St. Clair, and some of the workers from Labadee Power Plant lived in my town, and they would come home with their paint jobs messed up. We have scrubbers and cleaners on our coal-fired power plant. I've toured that one twice now since I've been in, and we have come a long ways to burning fossil fuel in a much cleaner and sustainable way, and I'm proud of that progress. But it doesn't have to come at the expense of our economy, and we certainly don't need to get over our toes where we affect our economy negatively, trying to affect climate change in a way that's just simply not there yet. But I haven't met anybody yet. I still haven't. I would be in support of common sense ways to continue to increase our ability and our methods to burn fossil fuel in a clean and sustainable way.
Mr. Vanderbilt?
All right, we are on climate change, correct? Drill, baby, drill. President Trump has already vowed that day one in office. And guess what? Our gas prices are going to go back down again. Also, he has vowed to eliminate the EPA, which is a thorn in our side where we have globalists dictating how we as American citizens are supposed to live, how we are supposed to deport ourselves. They are trying to put us into short little areas where we have to live and work and not have cars. We're not allowed to commute. A couple of examples of the disasters that cost the taxpayers billions. In Kansas City, with their transit giving away busing free, which of course caused vagrancy, homelessness to enter buses, and they lost tons of revenue. We have the rail to nowhere here in St. Louis, and because it was federally funded, they had to go ahead with it, otherwise they would have had to pay the whole balance themselves. Furthermore, the person who came up, the scientist, back in the 1960s, who developed the graphing and the scientific research data, by 1979 had redacted it and said it was all fake. Because if you recall, first it was global warming, and that stayed with us for 20 years. Then they found out that's not working, so now they have to make it up and say climate change. I went to school at the University of California, Berkeley. Boy, you can't get more green energy than that. As a matter of fact, to help understand it better, I took upper division climatology with one of the top professors in the world to better understand it. And even he stated, and this is years ago, but still, the most that would happen would be maybe 1.5 degree rise in 50 years. Finally, we get to eat what we want to eat, not synthetic meat. Thank you.
Mr. Madrigal, the Missouri Department of Health and Senior Services reported 1,942 deaths from drug overdoses in 2023. As a policymaker, what do you believe should be done to address and reduce those numbers?
Actually, those numbers are low this year. We are losing 8 young people a day to fentanyl. In 2012, we lost 242 people to fentanyl. Obviously, that number has gone up almost tenfold. Why? China is dedicated to killing our young people and utilizing the Mexican cartels to traffic in it. Right now in Missouri, we have 2 active Mexican cartels doing damage to our population. The Sinaloa cartel and the Jalisco Nueva Generación cartel. I'm the only one here who has the guts to call them out. Does it put a target on my back? Yeah. But I also know what they did to my mother country in Mexico. I saw what they did to California. I've seen what they do in Texas where my relatives live. So no, we have to do what's called truth in sentencing. And I've worked with smart, intellectual, legal minds, including Will Scharf, who kind of knows a thing or two about the law, for legislation called truth in sentencing. Meaning, if you get caught trafficking in fentanyl, which acts then as a mandatory minimum, you are going to prison, being sent away for a long, long time, and no liberal DA, state-funded Soros can come in and commute your sentence. I am here dedicated to protecting our children and fighting for their welfare.
Mr. Vanderman, your question?
So the question was about drug overdoses, and currently in the state of Missouri, we're working in two different important directions in this area. Drug overdoses, one is one too many. And the process of drug addiction can affect anyone at any social level and any marital status and of any age. I have run into people in the 26 years of ministry that are involved in the drug trade or taking drugs themselves of all ages. It is a scourge on our nation. But I believe two important initiatives right now that we are funding and working to expand in the state of Missouri will make a huge impact in this area. The first is drug treatment courts. Judge Persky here in Union is actively working to increase drug treatment courts, not only in our circuit here in Franklin County, but encouraging legislators to increase this process across our state. If we are going to slow down the process of drug overdoses, it doesn't just affect the person that's taking it now, it affects their kids and their family as well. It is a perpetual process that is passed on. So drug treatment courts are very important. I went to a graduation of one just a few weeks ago. It was a powerful evening where people that have gone through it themselves are now standing with others as they go through the process of recovery. And I believe encouraging that process is important. Today, I also toured the Hanai House in Washington, a house that is dedicated, and there are many of them around our state, to taking people that are involved in drugs right now, isolating them away from their friends and their influences, and getting their feet back under them and getting them back to work. Important processes within the state are at hand right now, but the drug epidemic is not going away. It simply moves from one place to another, and currently we're dealing with fentanyl in an unprecedented way.
Thank you. Next question is for Representative Vanderman. What do you believe the legislature can do to address illegal immigration in Missouri?
Well, as we all know, this has become a hot button issue within our country over the last 4 years, and it seems to have no end. The statement is made often that every state now is a border state, and I understand that mentality. We are in a situation where we have unmitigated immigration in our country, and without a limitation to immigration where they can integrate properly, we isolate different people groups within our nation, and they never fully integrate as Americans. So obviously our state is going to be dealing with immigration. This year in the legislature, we in the House led the charge in this area. There were several representatives that looked at ways that we could increase penalty provisions for trespassing and other provisions that might increase our ability to limit those that are in our state illegally or move them back to where they come from. Certainly in our country, we are a country of compassion. At some point, our relatives immigrated here, but we are a nation of laws. And when you break the laws of our state or our country, we can remedy that in a humane way. But I do believe that as a state, we have been making progress in this area, even though it was a problem that we did not ask for ourselves. We are actively working on it inside of the legislature, and I believe that we will continue to work on it. Those bills that were passed in the House, the movement and consensus that we built inside of the House, once again died in the Senate, like much of the things that we do in the House. But I am committed to continuing to work on the process of immigration within our state and the opportunity as a state to welcome those that come here legally.
Wow, immigration, huh? I guess I should use my white privilege here, folks. As you haven't guessed, my name is Rafael Madrigal. My family is from Mexico. But again, they did it the right way. Illegal immigration uses up the resources and funds badly needed that could be reallocated for veterans resources, funding for more police, as well as other much needed activities, which I agree with him can go toward treatment and so forth to get people out of the abuse that they inflict upon themselves and their families. One of the things, though, is we have to remember it's big business for the cartels. They are bringing people in from all around the world. The Mexican cartels are working cohesively to be able to bring people in because they are making billions, not millions, billions of dollars. And while all that is being done, other areas of entrance are being abused where fentanyl, illegal activity, guns, and other illegal activities are brought in. Number three is because Missouri is now third in the nation for human trafficking. We are talking about children. The children are the ones who are mostly abused in this. And if we don't go ahead and take the lead and actually attack the problem, doing legislation, telling the cartels Missouri is off limits to you, and if you try, we will arrest, convict, and imprison you for a long time, and we will confiscate and seize your assets. I have the solutions. I am already working with legal specialists to do that, and I make no bones about it. I will fight the cartels.
Mr. Madrigal, in the Missouri Assembly's 2024 session, a record low 28 non-budget bills were passed despite a Republican supermajority. How do you plan to work with your Republican colleagues in the future to facilitate the passage of more legislation?
First and foremost, I'm going to do single item bills, so not have it all bogged down so people can understand it and work with it. Also, this is my first crack at running at state office. I'm a businessman, I'm not a politician. However, as you can tell, I've been in conservative activities and movements for decades. So I know the state conservative leaders for quite some time. Most of them have been over my house. I see people right here who are in conservative leadership. Do I know the governors personally? Yes. Do I know the candidates for lieutenant governor, secretary of state, treasurer? Have I worked with them? Yes. The bills that I've already been talking about that I would do, I have already had conversations with, one-on-one, as well as in small groups. They are fully aware of what my plans are, and I also know what their bills are going to be and the movements we're going to do to make a bold, strong, conservative change for the better in the state of Missouri. So when you ask that, my answer is, I already know the guys. We're buddies. It's all about having a convincing argument to get the rest of the house in line. And that's where I use my business expertise to come up with the numbers to justify the argument.
Mr. Vanderman, your question?
So all legislation within the legislative process takes two things. It takes consensus and it takes momentum. Within the House, we passed many bills this year. Only 28 bills crossed the finish line that came from the Senate and got onto the budget or the desk of the governor besides the budget bills. But the House passed a lot of bills. We do every year. We work in the House. A lot of bills that you won't ever hear about. Bills like limiting EV charging stations, where the person that wants the EV charging station actually pays for them, which is the municipalities instead of the small business owners. We passed a bill this year that eased requirements for senior school bus drivers, where we have a critical shortage of. We passed a public safety bill, 3 of them. We passed an anti-human trafficking bill that died in the Senate, Representative Myers. We passed protection of children's identities. It came through Public Safety Committee that I sat on. We passed an IPP reform bill, 3 of them. They all came through the House. They all passed with broad consensus. We passed the expanded MOBUX program this year that increased that MOBUX program from $800 million to $1.2 billion. that allows more low-interest loans to happen within our state to spur business. That one actually made it across the finish line. We passed a bill that reduced regulations through the Sandbox Act. Representative Riley. We passed a bill that restricted franchise fees. That was Representative Keithley. We passed a very important bill, Cody Smith's bill, that prohibits state funding to abortion facilities and their affiliates. The House works. We passed lots of bills. If you want to blame somebody for a lack of things being done, you can look over to the other side of the building. But that side of the building operates much differently than ours. Their rules are different, their processes are different, and it's much more difficult over there to produce consensus and momentum. But we're working.
Thank you. Our last question. This is for Representative Banderman. In this session of the Missouri Assembly, a wide-ranging women's health bill that included provisions to expand access to contraceptives died in the Senate. If this legislation is revisited in the future, will you vote to protect access to contraceptives?
So I'm guessing by the framing of this particular question that they are dealing with the bills that were both in the House and Senate that would require insurance companies to cover self-administered hormonal contraceptives. This was bipartisan. Both the House and the Senate both had versions of this bill. Representative Peters on my side of the aisle carried this bill. Senator Gannon in the Senate carried this bill. I would support this type of legislation. There were many people that filed this, about 6, I believe, in the House, and at least 2 different senators. I would support a vote to expand access to contraceptives if we are dealing with it in the framework of insurance, requiring insurance to cover it. This subject is much broader than this particular question, and it has some entanglements that this question doesn't cover, and I'm not going to get into tonight. But for this particular piece of legislation, it did die in the Senate. I don't even think it came out of the House this year. I'd have to go back and look at it. I remember us talking about it. But certainly this is an issue that won't go away. Insurance-covered contraceptives is something that I would be in support of.
Question 2, Mr. Lauderdale?
Of course. Now, I would support contraceptives, but we must differentiate. Contraceptives, yes. Free will, free right. The morning after pill, no. I believe in the sanctity of life. I'll keep that answer short and brief, and that's where I stand. I will touch upon the previous question, though. For example, there are bills that I wish that I will go ahead, not just vote along with the rest of the House, but I will initiate. Day 1, December 1st, a pre-filing, I will do the School Children Protection Bill, which would put shields in all 3,000 of the schools in Missouri, 7-foot bulletproof shields with a school resource officer that would permanently deter any mass school shooting ever again and protecting our school children forever. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll now begin with our closing remarks. Each candidate will have 2 minutes of closing remarks. We'll begin with Representative Banderman.
Once again, I want to tell you thank you for coming out tonight to listen to this candidate forum, whether you're in person here or whether you're at home. I have spent the last 2 years working as our representative for District 119, and to say it has been an honor is an understatement. Extraordinary opportunity given to this little red-headed, corduroy-wearing boy from St. Clair, Missouri, who grew up in a single-parent home. But boy, do we live in a great country. I made 3 simple promises. I didn't come tonight with a lot of promises, and I'm not going to make a lot. I made 3 simple promises when I became our representative, that I would be accessible. If you haven't seen me around St. Clair, Union, or Pacific, you just haven't went outside. I have been extremely accessible, both to the general public and to the stakeholders, business owners, police, first responders, hospitals. I can't be any busier within our district. I made that promise, and I kept it. I made a promise to be transparent. Some questions are difficult, as you saw tonight. Some of them are multi-pronged. Some legislation is very challenging, has many provisions within one bill. But I have been transparent. I have never ran from a vote that I cast. I have never denied a news organization an opportunity to question me, even after some of the most difficult votes that I have cast in the last 2 years. I have been transparent. I made a promise and I kept it. The third promise I made was that I would be principled. There are some very weighty issues and difficult challenges that we have as a state, but I believe even the most complex problems can be broken down with simple principles. I've placed those on my website, bannerman4rep119.com. I put them up 2 years ago. I do not hide from my position or my principles. I stand firm on them. I would encourage you to go check them out. They have not changed. I made a promise to be principled, and I have kept that promise. Thank you very much.
Mr. Madrigal, your closing remarks?
Thank you. I wish to thank everybody in the audience for braving the weather and being here. For all those viewing at home on YouTube later on. Also, I wish to thank the Missourian and, of course, the Scenic Regional Library for hosting this event. But I have special thanks to my precious wife, who had the patience, understanding, and support to join me on this vital mission we have to save the state of Missouri. I provide solutions for the safety and prosperity of Missouri, but especially for the citizens of Franklin County. I provide viable solutions for the protection of our school children, even during mass school shootings. I also provide active solutions for the safety, greater safety of police officers, because one law enforcement officer's life in the line of duty is one too many. Furthermore, I have solutions for fiscal responsibility along with bringing tax relief to hard-working Missouri citizens through the elimination of the state tax and the personal property tax. First, it would help ease our taxpayers who get stuck with that personal property tax on vehicles they already own 3 weeks before Christmas. What kind of a Christmas surprise is that? Also, by the elimination of those taxes, it would give massive support to our small businesses and allow them to flourish. Please go to my website, madrigalformo.com. And when you have questions, just like everybody else I've been talking to, as we've been door knocking throughout, and I've got to know many of the people here, I'm happy to answer every question. And I hope to earn your vote because I ask to be vetted by everyone. God bless you, God bless Franklin County, and God bless the great state of Missouri.
Concludes our candidate forum. Thank you all for attending. I'm sure the candidates will be available for talking to people afterwards. And we have another candidate forum on July 23rd at the Washington Library for the other commissioner race and also the state house race between Mr. Simmons and Mr. Marquardt, Representative Marquardt. So you can watch that online as well, and or you can attend it at the Washington Library. Thank you all for participating.